Hello everybody, welcome to the 1987 Grand Prix Manager mod. We are now going to do the very first season of the 1987 mod, so let's see how we will do with Minardi. Round 1 of the season is the Brazilian Grand Prix, with both Williams drivers taking the front row of the grid. Ayrton Senna is 3rd for Lotus, Andrew Chesler is 4th for Brabham, Felipe Street takes 5th for Tyrrell, and round of the top 6 is Michele Alboreto for Ferrari. The two Minardi drivers qualifying 10th and 12th on the grid. During the formation lap, Riccardo Patrese stalled on the grid while he qualified 14th on the grid. However, just before the start of the race with the two Minardi drivers 12th and 10th, Gerhard Berger stalled his Ferrari, who qualified 13th on the grid, while both Minardi drivers held onto their positions. Lap 3 of the Grand Prix, Fabri and Brundle, who are 19th and 20th, both got 10-second stop go penalties and ended up coming out 23rd and 24th, with the only person behind them being Riccardo Patrese for Brabham. Lap 12 of the Grand Prix, Philip Street, who was in 3rd place in his Tyrrell, retired from the Grand Prix, which pushed Ayrton Senna and the Lotus into the top 6. Shortly after, Adrian Campos from Minardi retired from the Grand Prix. Lap 17 of the Grand Prix, Ayrton Senna and Michele Alboreto, who were 4th and 5th, had retired from the Grand Prix, pushing Satoru Nakajima into 5th place, only to shortly retire, as Stefan Johansson made the top 6 and Alessandro Nannini was in the top 6 also. After Nannini made his first pit stop of the Grand Prix, both Williams drivers were 1st and 2nd, Andrew Chesler was 3rd for Brabham, both McLarens 4th and 5th, and René Arnoux rounded off the top 6. After Nannini made his second pit stop of the Grand Prix, both Williams drivers were still 1st and 2nd, Andrew Chesler is in 3rd, Alain Prost 4th for McLaren, René Arnoux 5th for Ligier, and Thierry Boutsen 6th place for Benetton. Shortly afterwards, Nelson Piquet retired from 2nd place, Arnoux retiring from 5th, and Boutsen retiring from 6th, and Nannini retiring from 8th place, which meant there were now only 4 runners left in the Grand Prix: Mansell, De Cesaris, Prost, and Ghinzani. Not long after that, Nigel Mansell then retired from the Grand Prix, which meant De Cesaris was now the leader, Prost in 2nd, and Ghinzani was now the last runner. The race ended with De Cesaris winning, Prost in 2nd, Ghinzani 3rd, Mansell and Piquet and Arnoux were 4th, 5th and 6th, so they still get points even though they retired from the Grand Prix. So technically Minardi still finishes even though they retired in the race, and both of them suffering from accidents. Just before the second round of the season, 7 of the 13 teams started off with no test drivers. So McLaren got William Ribbs as their test driver, Joachim Winkelhock for Lotus as their test driver, Eric Comas for Ferrari, Jean Alesi for Tyrrell, Franco Scarpini for Arrows, Pale Barilla for Ligier, and Jari Normanen for Ags. Second bit of news, Riccardo Patrese and Joy Dumfries have both been injured from after the first Grand Prix, so Patrese is out for 7 races and Joy Dumfries for Benetton is out for just the next race. Round 2 is the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola, with both Williams taking the front row of the grid. Ayrton Senna is 3rd, Michele Alboreto 4th, Satoru Nakajima 5th, and rounding off the top 6 is Stefan Johansson for McLaren. The two Minardi drivers are 17th and 23rd on the grid. The Brabham driver, who is replacing Riccardo Patrese temporarily, qualified in 9th place, while the other Brabham driver of De Cesaris 19th on the grid. Off the start line, Roberto Moreno, who qualified 10th on the grid, stalled his car, so he was out of the Grand Prix. Meanwhile, both the Minardi drivers got to 15th and 19th. After both Minardis made their first pit stops of the Grand Prix, both Williams drivers were still leading the race, with Alboreto in 3rd, Senna in 4th, and both McLarens rounding off the top 6. Just before Nannini came for a second pit stop and after Campos did his pit stop, Alboreto retired from 2nd place, which pushed Teo Fabi and the Benetton to the top 6. After both Minardi drivers finished their second and final pit stop of the race, both Williamses were leaving the Grand Prix with Senna in third, both McLarens fourth and fifth, and Tail Fabi rounds off the top six. The race soon came to an end with Nelson Piquet winning the San Marino Grand Prix, with Nigel Mansell taking second place in the other Williams, and Ayrton Senna coming in third for Lotus, the two McLaren drivers fourth and fifth, and rounding off the top six is Tail Fabi for Benetton. Round 3 is the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa, Michele Alboreto taking pole position with Alain Prost in second, Ayrton Senna takes third for Lotus, Stefan Johansson fourth for McLaren, Gerhard Berger fifth for Ferrari, and Satoru Nakajima rounding off the top six for Lotus. The two Minardi drivers are 18th and 19th on the grid, and Stefano Mondina, who's still replaced Riccardo Patrese, is 10th on the grid, ahead of Andrew Cesaris in 11th. For the formation lap, Joy Dumfries stalled his car, and he qualified 15th in the grid, so he had to start from the pit lane. While off the start line, the two Minardi drivers held on to their positions of 18th and 19th. Well, 17th and 18th now because of Joy Dumfries. After both Minardi drivers made their first pit stops of the race, Alboreto was leading the Grand Prix with Prost in second, Nakajima in third, Jonathan Palmer in fourth, Stefan Johansson in fifth, and Ayrton Senna in sixth place. After both Minardi drivers made their second pit stops of the race, Prost is leading the race, Nakajima in second, Alboreto in third, Jonathan Palmer fourth, Ayrton Senna in fifth, and Gerhard Berger rounds up the top six. Lap 43 of the Belgian Grand Prix, Gerhard Berger retired from 5th place, which pushed Stefan Johansson into the final points position in 6th place, as the race came to an end with Alain Prost winning the Belgian Grand Prix, with Satoru Nakajima taking 2nd place for Lotus, Michele Alboreto in 3rd, Jonathan Palmer in 4th, Ayrton Senna in 5th, and Stefan Johansson rounds off the top 6. Round 4. Monte Carlo for the Monaco Grand Prix, with both Teros taking the front row of the grid, Gerhard Berger taking 3rd, Alessandrini in 4th place, Michele Alboreto in 5th, and Ayrton Senna rounding up the top 6, with Adrian Campos and the other Minardi down in 16th, Stefano Mondina qualifying 11th, with Mondina, 14th in the grid, compared to his teammate Andrew Cesaris, who's 12th on the grid. Off the start line, Alessandrini held on to his position of 4th, while Adrian Campos dropped down to 17th. After both Minardi drivers made their first pit stop of the race, Philippe Street was leading the race with Gerhard Berger in 2nd, Jonathan Palmer in 3rd, Alboreto in 4th, Ayrton Senna in 5th, and Nelson Piquet rounding off the top 6. Lap 57 of the Monaco Grand Prix, Alboreto retiring from 3rd place in the Ferrari, which pushed Nigel Mansell into the Williams into the top 6. However, Philippe Street also retired shortly, which ended up pushing Alain Prost in the McLaren into the top 6. After both Minardis made their second final pit stop of the race, Jonathan Palmer retired from leading the Grand Prix, which pushed Joy Dumfries into the top 6, which meant Berger was leading the Grand Prix with Piquet in 2nd, Senna in 3rd, 4th is Nigel Mansell, 5th Alain Prost, and Joy Dumfries in 6th place. However, Dumfries shortly retired and ended up pushing his teammate Thierry Boutsen into the top 6. Lap 71 of the Grand Prix, Nigel Mansell retired from 4th place, which then pushed Satoru Nakajima into the top 6 for Lotus. The race soon came to an end with Gerhard Berger winning the Monaco Grand Prix, with Nelson Piquet taking 2nd for Williams, Ayrton Senna 3rd for Lotus, Alain Prost taking 4th, Thierry Boutsen in 5th, and rounding off the top 6 is Stefano Mondina for Brabham. After 4 races, Alain Prost was leading the Drivers' Championship by 4 points ahead of Piquet, who was a further 7 points ahead of Ayrton Senna in the Lotus. And in the Constructors' Championship, Williams have a 2-point lead over McLaren, who has a further 8 points lead over Lotus, who are sitting in 3rd. Round 5 is the American Grand Prix at Detroit City. Adrian Campos from Minardi takes the position, Ayrton Senna in third, both Williams drivers third and fourth, Alan Prost in fifth, Williams Street in sixth. Now, as you can see, there was one driver missing in the result. That's because Alfonso did not set a lap time, crashed out for a time to reset, and thus will not be taking part for the Grand Prix. For Brabham's sake, Stefano Modena qualifying in 19th place, while Andrew Chesris qualified in 8th. Off the start line, Yannick Dalmas, who qualified 22nd on the grid, stalled his car, so he was out of the Grand Prix. Adrian Campos, meanwhile, holds on to the lead of the Grand Prix. Lap 9 of the Grand Prix, Satoru Nakajima from 6th place retires, along with Philippe Streiff, who was in 7th, and Fabre, who was down at the back of the field in his AGS, which puts Andrej Chesris into the top 6. After Adrian Campos made his first pit stop of the Grand Prix, he was leading the Grand Prix with Alan Prost in 2nd, Martin Brundle third for Zach Speed, Jonathan Palmer 4th, Dumfries 5th, and Stefan Johansson in 6th, as Adrian Campos retires from the Grand Prix, which pushed Nelson Piquet into the top 6. Lap 32 of the American Grand Prix, Stefan Johansson retiring from 4th place, pushing Andrej Chesris into the top 6, as Piccolo Gonzani is the last runner in 7th place for Ligier. Lap 49 of the American Grand Prix, Johnny Dumfries retiring from 4th place, which pushed the last of the runner, Piccolo Gonzani, into the points position. The American Grand Prix came to an end with Alain Prost winning the American Grand Prix, with Martin Brundle for Zach Speed taking 2nd place, Jonathan Palmer from Tyrrell taking 3rd place, Piquet 4th for Williams, Chesris 5th for Brabham, and Piccolo Gonzani rounding off the top 6. Before round 6 of the season, 2 drivers were injured after the American Grand Prix. Jonathan Palmer for Tyrrell is out for 1 race, and Adrian Campos for Minardi is out for 3 races. Now, Campos being out for 3 races was a huge problem for me because, well, Minardi is running out of money and we've been constantly making losses, and despite my best efforts, all I was capable of doing was just reducing the amount of money we lost per race. We couldn't actually make a profit, not even with the sponsors was helping. So the fact that Campos was injured meant I wasn't going to get any money out of him until he came back. Round 6, the French Grand Prix of Paul Ricard shows that both Williams drivers make the front row. Roberto Moreno for Alex is in 3rd, Alessandro Nini for Minardi in 4th, and both Zach Speed drivers rounding off the top 6. Pierluigi Martini from the other Minardi is 11th on the grid, and the 3 drivers that won't be taking part are Thierry Boutsen and both Aros drivers. Jean Alesi has replaced Jonathan Palmer for the 1 race, qualified 21st, while Philippe Streiff from the other title is 22nd, and Stefano Modena, who qualified 13th for Brabham, while Andrew Chesris qualified 10th. Off of the start line, both drivers kept their positions of 4th and 11th. After the 2 Estella drivers made their first pit stops, Piquet was leading the Grand Prix, Mansell in 2nd, Moreno 3rd, both Zach Speed drivers 4th and 5th, and rounding out the top 6 is Alessandro Nannini for Minardi. However, Alessandro Nannini and Piquet retired from 1st and 6th, which pushed Andrew Chesris and Rene Arnoux into the points positions. Lap 33 of the French Grand Prix, and from 3rd place Martin Brundle had retired from the Grand Prix, which pushed Rene Arnoux in the Ligier into the top 6. After Martini made his 2nd and final pit stop of the race, he did immediately retire from the Grand Prix along with Johnny Dumfries. However, Mansell's leading the Grand Prix with Moreno in 2nd, Christian Danner in 3rd, Andrew Chesris in 4th, Yannick Dalmas in 5th, and Rene Arnoux rounding off the top 6. Lap 52 of the Grand Prix, Pascal Fabry retired from 6th place, which pushed Yannick Dalmas from 7th to 6th. Lap 58 of the French Grand Prix, and Roberto Moreno retiring from 2nd place in the AGS, which gave the potential to push René Arnoux into the points. However, the race came to an end with Mansell winning the race, both Brabham 2nd and 3rd, Danner in 4th, Yannick Dalmas in 5th, and Roberto Moreno being classified as 6th place, which means René Arnoux misses out on the final point. Just before round 7 of the season, Picala Gonzani has been injured for one race, so he will be out for the next Grand Prix, while Campos and Patrese are both still injured and still not taking part. Round 7, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone shows both Williams to qualify in the front row, McLaren on the second row, Alessandro Nini in 5th, and René Arnoux for Ligier rounding off the top 6. As you can see, only the top 5 drivers made within 107% time. The other Minardi of Pierluigi Martini is in 20th. The 3 drivers not taking part are Danner, Warwick or De Cesaris. Stefano Mondina, who made it through, qualified 17th for Brabham. Peo Barella qualified in 18th for Ligier, while his teammate was in 6th. And Nini out qualifying the test driver for Minardi. Also, so only one of the 3 test drivers out-qualified one of the main drivers. Off the start line, Pierluigi Martini kept on to 20th, while Alessandro Nini gained the position off the start line. Lap 19 of the British Grand Prix, and both Williams drivers who were 1st and 2nd both retired at the same time, which would help push Roberto Moreno and Pascal Fabry into the top 6. After the Minardi drivers made their second pit stop of the race, Stefan Johansson and Prost will lead for McLaren, Senna in 3rd, Arnoux in 4th, and both AGS drivers 5th and 6th. Lap 46 of the Grand Prix, Stefan Johansson retires from the lead of the Grand Prix, which gives the lead to his teammate Prost, and also pushes Stefano Mondina into the top 6. Just after Martini made his pit stop before Alessandro Nini made his pit stop, Pascal Fabry retired from 5th place, which pushed Roberto Moreno into the top 6. As Prost was leading the Grand Prix, Senna in 2nd, Berger 3rd, Arnoux 4th, Modena 5th, and Moreno rounding off the top 6. The race came to an end with Prost winning the British Grand Prix. Senna took 2nd for Lotus, Berger 3rd for Ferrari, René Arnoux 4th for Ligier, Stefano Mondina 5th for Brabham, and rounding off the top 6 was Roberto Moreno in the AGS. Round 8 is the German Grand Prix at Hockenheim, with both McLaren drivers taking the front row. Nigel Mansell is in 3rd, Ayrton Senna takes 4th, Nelson Piquet in 5th, and rounding up the top 6 is Gerhard Berger for Ferrari. The 2 Minardi drivers are 18th and 21st in the grid. Note there are 4 drivers missing from this grid. Both the Ligier drivers and both the Larousse drivers did not set a lap time, and those 4 drivers will not be taking part. And neither is Derek Warwick for Arrows, Alessandro Nini for Minardi, and Pascal Fabry for AGS. In the formation lap, Pierluigi Martini, who qualified 18th in the grid, stalled his car so he had to start from the pit lane. Now off the start line, of course, Martini is at the back of the field because, like I said, he stalled his car on the formation lap. Lap 15 of the German Grand Prix, and Stefan Johansson, who was in 2nd place on the race, had retired from the Grand Prix, which pushed Michele Alboreto into the top 6. After Martini made his first pit stop of the race, Prost was leading the Grand Prix with Mansell in 2nd, Senna was in 3rd, Piquet in 4th, Gerhard Berger in 5th, and Michele Alboreto rounded off the top 6. After Martini made his second and final pit stop of the race, Prost was still leading the race with both Williams in 2nd and 3rd, Ayrton Senna was in 4th, Gerhard Berger in 5th, and Andrew De Cesaris rounded off the top 6. The race came to an end with Alain Prost winning the Grand Prix with both Williams drivers 2nd and 3rd, Ayrton Senna took 4th for Lotus, Gerhard Berger finished in 5th for Ferrari, and rounding off the top 6 was Andrew Chesnut for Brabham. And now as we look into the Drivers' Championship, as we are now halfway into the season, Alain Prost with 24 more points than Mansell and Piquet, who are tied 2nd with 24 points, who are both ahead of Senna, who's 5 points behind them. And in the Constructors' Championship, McLaren with a 5-point lead over Williams, who are in 2nd, and Lotus and Brabham best of the rest with only 25 points each, tying 3rd place. Just before round 9 of the season, Roberto Moreno for AGS did get injured and he's out for 2 races. Meanwhile, Riccardo Patrese finally returns, and Adrian Campos for Minardi finally returns also. Round 9 is the Hungarian Grand Prix at Hungaroring, and Jonathan Palmer takes pole position in the Tyrrell. Jari Neurman, who has replaced Roberto Moreno from his injuries, in 2nd. Nigel Mansell takes 3rd, Alain Prost in 4th, Nelson Piquet in 5th, and round off the top 6 is Joy Dumfries for Benetton. The 2 Minardi drivers of Alessandro Nannini and Adrian Campos 14th and 15th on the grid. On the formation left, Jonathan Palmer, who qualified in pole position, stalled his car, so he had to start from the pit lane. And at the start of the race, both drivers gained position thanks to Palmer's stalling. However, they do keep their race position. Meanwhile, Campos jumps up to 12th place, passing Philippe Alliot in the Rousse. Lap 15 of the Grand Prix, Neurman and Mansell, who were 1st and 2nd in the race, both retired from the Grand Prix, which pushed Alboreto and Arnoux into the top 6, while letting Alain Prost take the lead of the Grand Prix. After both Minardi drivers made their first pit stops of the race, Alain Prost was leading the Grand Prix with Piquet in 2nd, Joy Dumfries in 3rd, Berger in 4th, Senna in 5th, and rounding up the top 6 is Adrian Campos for Minardi. Lap 57 of the Grand Prix, Joy Dumfries retired from 5th place, which pushed René Arnoux into the point position, only for him to retire, to the next person to be in the top 6 be Satoru Nakajima. After the second pit stop was completed, Prost was leading the race with Piquet in 2nd, Senna in 3rd, Berger in 4th, Campos in 5th, and Nakajima in 6th place. Lap 67 of the Hungarian Grand Prix, Gerhard Berger retiring from 4th place to push Campos into that 4th position and push Alboreto into a points position in 6th. While meanwhile, shortly after that, 2 more drivers in the top 6 end up retiring. One of them is Prost from the lead of the Grand Prix, and the other is Martin Brundle, who was just outside the points in 7th. Lap 75 of the Hungarian Grand Prix now, and the next person to retire from the top 6 is Ayrton Senna from 2nd place. It would have pushed Alessandro Nannini into 5th place as he got into the points. However, just missing out in 6th place is going to be Philippe Streiff for Tyrrell, as Piquet wins the Grand Prix for Hungary, while Senna still gets classified 2nd, Campos in 3rd, Nakajima in 4th, Alboreto in 5th, and round at the top 6 is Alessandro Nannini in the Minardi. Just before round 10 of the season, Christian Danner, the next person to suffer an injury, and will be out for the next 2 races. Round 10 of the season is the Austrian Grand Prix at Österreich, and Riccardo Patrese taking pole position, Alain Prost in 2nd, Ayrton Senna in 3rd, both Williams drivers 4th and 5th, and rounding off the top 6 is Satoru Nakajima for Lotus. While both Minardi drivers of Nannini and Campos are 12th and 16th on the grid, Derek Warwick, the only driver not to make it within 107%, and thus won't be taking part for the race. Jari Neurman, who's still replacing Roberto Moreno, qualified 18th, while his teammate Fabri in 11th, and Chris Nielsen, who is replaced the injured Christian Danner, is 25th on the grid, while his teammate Martin Brundle is 19th on the grid. On the formation lap, Jonathan Palmer, who qualified 23rd in his Tyrrell, stalled his car, so he had to start from the pit lane. and right off the start, Adrian Campos gained possession because of that. They also gained another possession for overtaking someone. Nannini held on to 12th possession. On the third lap of the Austrian Grand Prix, Philippe Streiff, who was in 20th place, got a 10-second stop-go penalty and was now behind his teammate Jonathan Palmer. After the first pit stop of the Austrian Grand Prix, Satoru Nakajima was in first place with Mansell in second, Riccardo Patrese in third, Alain Prost in fourth, Ayrton Senna in fifth, and round up the top six is Gerhard Berger for Ferrari. After the second pit stop was completed, Satoru Nakajima was leading the Grand Prix with Piquet in second, Senna taking third, Patrese in fourth, Mansell in fifth, and rounding up the top six is Alain Prost for McLaren. Lap 53 of the Grand Prix, Ayrton Senna retiring from third place, however still gets classified third as Nakajima wins the Austrian Grand Prix, with Piquet taking second, Senna finishing third, Patrese takes fourth, Mansell in fifth, and rounding up the top six is Alain Prost for McLaren. Round 11 of the Italian Grand Prix at Monza sees both Williams drivers take the front row of the grid, McLaren on the second row, Ayrton Senna in fifth, and Riccardo Patrese rounds up the top six for Brabham. The two Minardi drivers of Nannini and Campos are 7th and 9th in the grid, and Chris Nissen qualified 23rd with Zach Speed, while his teammate Martin Brundle qualifies in 21st. Off the start line, Satoru Nakajima, who qualified 8th in the grid, has stalled his car, so he was out of the Grand Prix. Meanwhile, both Minardi drivers kept their positions of 7th and 8th. Lap 6 of the Italian Grand Prix, and Nigel Mansell retires from second place, which pushed Alessandro Nannini into the top 6. After the first pit stop was completed, Piquet was leading the Grand Prix with Prost taking second, Johansson is in third with Patrese fourth, Ayrton Senna in fifth, and rounding off the top 6 is Alessandro Nannini, as Adrian Campos from 8th place retired from the Grand Prix. After Nannini made his first pit stop of the race, Prost is leading the Grand Prix with Piquet in second, Senna is in third, Johansson in fourth, Riccardo Patrese fifth, and rounding off the top 6 is Alessandro Nannini for Minardi. The race soon came to an end with Alain Prost winning the Italian Grand Prix. Taking second is Nelson Piquet for Williams, Ayrton Senna third for Lotus, Riccardo Patrese fourth for Brabham, Stefan Johansson 5th for McLaren, and finally, rounding off the top 6 is Alessandro Nannini for Minardi. Round 12, the Portuguese Grand Prix at Estoril. Ayrton Senna takes pole position with Alboreto in second, both McLaren drivers 3rd and 4th, Gerhard Berger in 5th, and rounding off the top 6 is Martin Brundle for Zach Speed, the two Minardi drivers qualifying 9th and 16th on the grid. On the formation lap, Nelson Piquet, who qualified 15th in his Williams, stalled on the grid and has started from the pit lane. While off the start line, the two Minardi drivers kept up their positions of 9th and 15th. Lap 10 of the Portuguese Grand Prix, Ayrton Senna retired from the lead of the Grand Prix, which pushed his teammate Satoru Nakajima into the top 6. After both Minardis made their first pit stops of the race, Alboreto was leading the Grand Prix with both McLaren 2nd and 3rd, Gerhard Berger in 4th, Nakajima in 5th, and rounding up the top 6 is Martin Brundle for Zach Speed. Lap 47 of the Grand Prix, Satoru Nakajima retiring from 5th place, which pushed Roberto Moreno into the top 6 for AGS. After both Minardis made their second pit stops of the race, Roberto Moreno retired for AGS, and also Brundle retired for Zach Speed. Meanwhile, Prost is leading the Grand Prix with Alboreto in 2nd, Stefan Johansson in 3rd, Berger in 4th, Jonathan Palmer in 5th, and round the top 6 is Yannick Dalmas for LaRousse. The race soon came to an end with Prost winning the Portuguese Grand Prix, with both Ferrari drivers taking 2nd and 3rd. In 4th is Stefan Johansson in McLaren, Jonathan Palmer in 5th, and Yannick Dalmas classified as 6th place and gets the final point for the Roos. Now, looking at the Drivers' Championship, we will see that Alain Prost is leading the championship by 22 points ahead of PK. Ayrton Senna third with 33 points, who is ahead of Nigel Mansell in 4th place with only 26 points. Now looking at the Constructors' Championship, McLaren have a 4-point lead over Williams, who are 20 points ahead of Lotus, who are in 3rd, who is ahead of Ferrari and Brabham, who both have 31 points each. Round 13 is the Mexican Grand Prix at Mexico City, with both McLarens taking the front row, both Lotus taking the 2nd row, Adrian Campos takes 5th for Minardi, and right off the top 6 is Nelson Piquet for Williams. Only the drivers 9th and below the grid all failed to make the 107% time, including the other Minardi driver of Alessandro Nini, down in 14th. The 3 drivers who aren't taking part for the Grand Prix are Roberto Moreno in the AGS and both Aros drivers of Cheever and Warwick. Off the start line, both the Minardi drivers kept on to their positions of 5th and 14th. Lap 11 of the Mexican Grand Prix, Nigel Mansell retiring from the Grand Prix from 4th, which pushed Michele Alboreto into the top 6, while at the same time Alessandro Nini retired from the Grand Prix from last place. After the first pit stop of the Grand Prix, Prost in the Grand Prix was Senna in 2nd, Johansson in 3rd, Piquet 4th, Alboreto in 5th, and right off the top 6, Satoru Nakajima for Lotus. Lap 31 of the Mexican Grand Prix, Adrian Campos retired from the Grand Prix as from last place. Lap 54 of the Mexican Grand Prix, and Ayrton Senna retiring from 3rd place in his Lotus, which pushed Thierry Boutsen in the Benetton into the top 6. Lap 61 of the Mexican Grand Prix, and Alboreto and Nakajima retiring from 4th and 5th at the same time, which pushed Boutsen into 5th for Benetton and Jonathan Palmer in the Tyrrell into the top 6. As the race came to an end with Prost winning the Grand Prix with Piquet in 2nd, Johansson taking 3rd, Berger in 4th, Boutsen in 5th for Benetton, and finally Jonathan Palmer in 6th place. Okay, this next race you're looking at right now is not round 14, because I don't know what happened, but round 14 wasn't recorded, and I don't have an explanation for how that happened because I recorded rounds 13 and 14 in the same clip. However, somehow 14 got cut out. But this is round 15 then. So for round 15 is the Japanese Grand Prix Suzuka, with Ayrton Senna taking pole position, Alain Prost in 2nd, Alboreto in 3rd for Ferrari, Stefan Johansson 4th for McLaren, Adrian Campos 5th for Minardi, and Berger is in 6th for Ferrari. Alessandro Nini taking 10th in the grid, and 4 people didn't make the 100% time, but the 3 knocked out are both AGS drivers and Picala Ginzani for Ligier. Off of the start line, both Minardi drivers kept on to their positions of 5th and 10th. Lap 19 of the Japanese Grand Prix, Alessandro Nini from 9th place retired from the Grand Prix along with Nigel Mansell, and just before Adrian Campos came to the pits for his first stop of the Grand Prix. After his first pit stop, Ayrton Senna retired from 4th place in the Lotus, which pushed Adrian Campos to 6th place, while Prost fleeing the race with Alboreto in 2nd, Johansson in 3rd, Palmer in 4th, Berger in 5th, and Campos rounds up the top 6. After Campos made his 2nd pit stop of the race, Prost fleeing the Grand Prix with Alboreto in 2nd, Johansson in 3rd, Berger in 4th, Palmer in 5th, and rounding up the top 6 is Nelson Piquet for Williams. Lap 51 of the Japanese Grand Prix, and Jonathan Palmer in the Tyrrell has retired from 5th place, which pushed Thierry Boutsen into the top 6. Not too long after Jonathan Palmer's retirement, Michele Alboreto in the Ferrari retired from 2nd place, which would have helped Adrian Campos be pushed back into the top 6. However, the race came to an end with both McLarens taking a 1-2 victory, Alboreto getting classified as 3rd, Berger in 4th, Piquet in 5th, and Thierry Boutsen gained the final point in his Benetton. In the Drivers' Championship, Alain Prost with a 29-point lead he already won the Drivers' Championship from the missing race. While in the Constructors' Championship, McLaren have wrapped up the Constructors' Championship from this with one race to go. So both championships were completed before the final round at Australia took place. Round 16, the final round at Adelaide for the Australian Grand Prix, sees Alain Prost taking pole position, both Williams drivers taking second and third, Stefan Johansson in fourth, Ayrton Senna in fifth, and Michele Alboreto running off the top six, with the two Minardi drivers of Alessandro Nannini and Adrian Campos 10th and 23rd on the grid, and the only two drivers who failed to make the 107% time and thus will not be taking part in the race are Mikael Ghinzani for Ligier and Derek Warwick for Arrows. On to the formation lap, and Joy Dumfries, who qualified in 12th place on the grid, stalled his car so he had to start from the pit lane. However, right off the start, Adrian Campos held on to his position of 22nd, while Alessandro Nannini overtook someone to get into 9th place. So the first pit stop was completed. Nigel Mansell from the second place retired from the Grand Prix, which pushed Nakajima into the top 6. Meanwhile, Piquet leads the Grand Prix with both McLaren drivers 6th and 3rd, Lotus driver Ayrton Senna is 4th, Alboreto 5th and Nakajima into the top 6, while Alessandro Nannini retires from the Grand Prix. Lap 66 of the Grand Prix, Stefan Johansson in the McLaren has retired from the Grand Prix, which pushed Stefano Mondia in the Brabham into the top 6 as Boutsen in the Benetton retires from 8th place. However, Alain Prost in the McLaren also retires from the Grand Prix, which pushed Fabry in from AGS into the top 6. Meanwhile, after Campos made second pit stop of the race, Piquet was leading from Senna second, Alboreto third, Nakajima fourth, Medina fifth, and Fabry running off the top 6. The race came to an end with Nelson Piquet winning the Australian Grand Prix, while Ayrton Senna takes second, Alboreto in third, Nakajima taking fourth, Medina fifth, and finally Pascal Fabry, the final driver to score points in the final race of the season. Now it's time to see the final results of the first season of this 1987 mod, and Alain Prost winning the championship by 20 points ahead of Nelson Piquet in second. Ayrton Senna in third place with 29 points less than Piquet, however managed to have 16 more points than Nigel Mansell and Gerhard Berger, who tied fourth. Satoru Nakajima only gained 23 points in the other Lotus, while Stefan Johansson gets 22 points compared to his teammate who got 91. And right off the top 8 is Michele Alboreto, who's only 6 points shorter than his teammate Gerhard Berger. On to the second page in the Drivers' Championship, and we have Andrew Chesworth of Brabham with 18 points ahead of Jonathan Powell in the Tyrrell, who managed to get 10 points. Stefan Medina only has half the points of what Andrew Chesworth scored this season, as Martin Brundle in the Sax Speed getting an impressive 6 points, which is the same as Ricard Patrese in the Brabham, which is less impressive for him. Thierry Boutsen, the top Benetton driver, only gained 5 points this season, which is the same amount of points as Mikael Ghinzani in the Ligier, who's only got 1 more point than Renier New, who's only got 4 points. On to page 3, and the top of page 3 is Adrian Campos, who has 4 points, which is the same as Renier New in the Ligier. Yannick Damas for the Roos, Christian Dana for Sax Speed both get 3 points each. Roberto Rail in the Ags getting 2 points, which is the same number of points as Alessandro Nannini scored for Minardi. And the final 2 drivers to score points is Teo Fabi for Benetton and Pascal Fabry for AGS. As the first person to have got no points on this list is Pelo Barella for Ligier. The second page to show the drivers who didn't score points are Jari Nuramin for AGS, Jean Alesi, Philip Streif for Tyrrell, Derek Warwick for Arrows, Joey Dumfries for Benetton, Philip Palio and Scott Pruitt for the Roos, and A. Chiva last on this list for Arrows, also with no points. The last 2 drivers on the list are Pierluigi Martini for Minardi and Chris Nissen for Zack Speed. Now the Drivers' Championship is completed, let's look at the Constructors' Championship. McLaren winning the Constructors' Championship with 14 points, Williams taking second with 97 points, who are 32 points ahead of Lotus in third. Ferrari in fourth place with only 46 points, which is 13 more than Brabham in fifth. Terrell, 6th place with only 10 points, who are 1 point ahead of Zach Speed and Liché, who both share 9 points each. Looking at the second page of the Constructors' Championship, Benetton and Minardi tie 9th place with 6 points, which is 3 more than Ags and LaRousse, who share 3 points in 11th. And finally, Arrows, the last team in the Constructors' Championship, and also the only team that fails to score a single point this season. So, I hope you enjoyed the first season of this 1987 mod. I would show you the engine upgrades, however, being season 1, there are no engine upgrades this episode. But I hope you will be looking forward to the second season of the 1987 mod. Spoiler alert, we are in massive financial issues, so hopefully we will manage to rectify that problem and not go bankrupt in season 2. What will happen? We'll just have to wait and see. So thank you guys so much for watching, and goodbye!